They call me mad, but look upon the visions I have seen and try to hold your sanity intact. I alone know the shrouded secrets of the past that have given way to the darkness gripping this world, and I alone have glimpsed the possible futures, few of which include the survival of our world and none that escape the carnage and misery that will scar it forever. I am the Hermit of Henge, and in these scrolls I shall chronicle the last days of the Iron Kingdoms as we know it. ... Ashlyn Daly, now known across the Free Lael as the Queen's Blade, retreated to the privacy of her chambers within Merowyn's palace, and she wept. Her country had barely begun to pick up the pieces of the grueling war and occupation by Khador before the Infernals struck. The coronation of Lael's new queen, Caitlin de la Martin, a day for which Ashlyn had prayed since before Khador's invasion, was forced to be conducted in hiding while the screams of her countrymen could be heard outside as their souls were ripped from their bodies, and she was powerless to act. Only the queen herself could have stayed her sword that day, but it was her wish that Ashlyn be sworn in and officially decreed the highest military authority in the land. Since then, she could find no reprieve from the stench of these hellish nightmares. Their black blood soaked her boots and coated her blade as she led Merowyn's armies in the ongoing effort to rebuff the demons seeking their souls. But for every nightmare she vanquished, 2 more would take its place, and for every soul she saved, 10 would be stolen from under her ward. For the moment, she would mourn their loss while struggling not to consider their fate beyond this world. And when the demons came again, by morrow's light, they would have their heads, hearts, and entrails liberated from their vile forms by the Queen's Blade. ... Though it was the souls of humans the Infernals prized, they let nothing deprive them of what they were due. Rulefolk, Iosian, Trollblood, even scorn. All would pay the price of Thamar's sin unless ancient grievances could be buried. ... The Oracle Calandra Trusair watched black clouds drift toward her home. The mad hermit had warned them of the coming locusts, of the devastation they would bring. The warning had troubled her then. Now, she was afraid. The gathering darkness above blew from the pyres of human cities. Untold numbers of dead, great plazas, all that lay in the path of these creatures was rendered to ash and ruin. Dunya herself writhed under their touch, wounded deeper than even by the jaws of the worm. She felt the mother's pain in her flesh. A sadness took root in her soul, fed by the faces of grim human refugees and urban creoles fleeing the locusts' advance. Once, her people had been displaced to seek refuge. Under this regime of darkness, it seemed all sought safety. So many seek the united creole's strength, Calandra said to her daughter, but truly to herself. They were happy to let the kin struggle. They reap their own harvest. The other members of her daughter's knot made sounds of agreement, praising her insight. How does the tree grow, daughter? Calandra asked. Can it grow upon bare stones? No, mother. What feeds it? The soil, made richer from plants that have given up their lives, the rain that quenches its thirst. Calandra nodded at her. And when the wind blows? The bows of its brothers and sisters shield it. Calandra's daughter asked suspiciously. A lone tree must face the storm with its own roots. Calandra knitted her fingers before her face, but together their roots embraced to grip the soil, to hold each other fast. The sisters of the knot mused on her words. The forest of men is aflame, daughter, Calandra said. It thins with each day. What do you propose? Her daughter asked. Grab the roots tight and hold against the storm, the oracle said. ... While the peoples of the wild learned the importance of unity, the nations of humankind made similar efforts, but their way was yet cloaked in veiled threats, in displays of power, of human arrogance, that slowed such labors. ... It had taken the Supreme Commandant and his retinue nearly 3 weeks to return to Korsk. The dirigible had barely made it over the Thornwood before they were forced to continue on foot. Pursued by Signarin Rangers and Crucible Guard, their survival had been hard won. Iris recalled staring up at the towering black walls of Stasikov Palace, where the Empress awaited his audience, and wishing for nothing more than that he could have traded places with Commander Strakov aboard the Stormbreaker. Now, many months later, as he approached the smoldering city of Caspia, he wondered if Strakov's soul were any safer than Irisk's own, locked in a Signarin prison, or if the Infernals had devastated this unconquerable city, had claimed it already. ... While mortals sought unity, the grasping tendrils of infernal corruption spread across the land like a foul wind. No city or village in Immoren escaped their greedy touch. ... Ashlyn did not look up when the nobleman Moeller entered the meeting chamber. She already knew what he would say, and she would have preferred to never hear it. "They are within our walls," Moeller said. "How can you be sure?" Ashlyn said. "The 122 bodies in the wine cellars." Despite Ashlyn's recent military promotion, Moeller did not mince words with her. When he spoke, rank meant nothing between them. "These things can't be killed," Moeller said. "They can't be wounded. They can't be beaten. Freelail is already done being free." Ashlyn stiffened. "So, what would you have us do in the face of this new threat?" Moeller shrugged. "Seek allies. Flee their kingdoms. Or die. If we hesitate, these things will choose for us." "They will not. The Queen chooses." Ashlyn touched her blade. "I choose. ... Tense words shared over sheathed blades can help build common ground, but only humility can bridge such great gulfs. North and South worked to combine their strength as a spurned youth dreamed of reunification. ... Julius looked north, imagining the flag of Lael fluttering from every battlement. There are not many kings, he thought, who could claim to lose a queen and a sizable portion of their kingdoms in as short time as he had. "Midwinter will pay for his betrayal," said Julius's war master at his side. The young king turned to face him. "Do you suppose Caitlin is safe?" The war master scowled. "What the little bird does now should not concern you. She's as much a traitor as Midwinter." "Just smarter than we credited her," Julius said. Like Midwinter, Caitlin had an agenda of her own. Julius had built the bridge to reach it. And now is not the time to turn away friends. We need every ally we can hold. The thought stung. The infernal attack on Caspia was still raw, bloody. It left scars so deep Julius was still discovering them. "What do you propose, Majesty?" the War Master asked. "Unity. Survival." Julius lowered his voice. "No matter the cost. ... War is no stranger in the Iron Kingdoms. Its name is inscribed 1,000 times on every stone. But steel cannot fight shadow. As the Infernals claimed their due, cities crumbled and thousands of lights went dark. A few noble souls held up a torch of hope, offering everything they had or ever would have to drive back the darkness. Such champions often faced opposition from unexpected corners, even those whom they held dear. ... The great temple buzzed with activity, a vast beehive made of glimmering steel. Servitors and ascended priests, housed in spidery vessels, crawled along a looming arch covered in crackling nodes. The Iron Mother Directrix observed them, basking in their unity. Her peace was shattered when the entrance far overhead spiraled open. Aurora glided down the enormous chamber on humming metal wings to land gracefully at Iron Mother's back. The girl was a flat note in the symphony, impossible to ignore. Is your foolishness at its end? Iron Mother did not turn from the fabrication of the celestial gate. Hardly, Aurora sniped. Her tone was sharp, victorious. I went looking for him. Right now, he's clinging to a life he almost lost fighting the invaders. His efforts are sentimentality, but useful. The gate nears its completion, and his actions provide an adequate distraction, Iron Mother said. Cirrus's arrival will render the invaders inconsequential. Aurora moved to impede her mother's view. While you hide here, Mother, the world beyond the temple dies. The Iron Mother brushed her daughter aside. This world dies so the Maiden of Gears may remake it. Time is at hand for all things to ascend. Time we no longer have. Iron Mother regarded Aurora, hurt and desperation written on Aurora's face. The friction between them was a pair of gears that could never fully mesh. She relented. Your new frame awaits. Take it. Find him. Perhaps he'll listen. She weighed her next words. To his daughter. Calculated words that could not be retracted. Sebastian Nemo had refused her offer of transcendence. Sending off Aurora, she hoped to make him reconsider and free herself from a troublesome young woman while her great work reached its completion. ... Many tried to account for the souls that had been claimed by the Infernals, but the toll was beyond any mortal ability to reckon. In the horrors that plagued my mind, however, I can tell you they numbered in the scores of thousands before the old rivalries were put aside and tribes took up arms together. ... Gervalt Irisk had long ago, it seemed now, knelt before his Empress and her sorcerer consort. Both held their faces as masks, though the Supreme Commandant could sense the pleasure concealed beneath. They were a pair of majestic statues clad in Khador's colors. After your last reprimand, I did not think another was required, the Empress had said at long last. Her voice echoed through the chamber, words vanishing among the gathering throng of silent onlookers. Irisk wondered if they were there to witness his death. Nor I, Empress, Irisk said. He did not bother with false bravado or humility. Neither would afford him much. Yet once again, here you are, having failed your Empress and your nation, she said. His eyes moved to the shape at her left hand. It loomed in the shadows. That's where he's gone, Irisk thought. Though rumors flew freely, there were no confirmed reports of the Butcher of Kardov fighting in Lael. The Supreme Commandant had hoped him dead, yet here he stood, panting like a hound straining at its leash. Light caught the edge of the large man's axe. The Butcher's body bore fresh scars, his armor in despicable shape. He looked like a man who'd swam an ocean of enemy blades to look down on Irisk today. The mad, raving hound of Khador, the bloodied butcherer of men. What little light was once in his eyes had fled forever. I once denied your death, the Empress said, hoping you would yet prove useful to our empire. Was I mistaken? Irisk locked eyes with her murderer instead of the Empress. Perhaps. She continued, the blade that fails to cut once can be sharpened, if it fails again. The Empress's hand traced a line along the Butcher's obscene axe head. If it fails again, you look for a better, sharper one. My Empress, Irisk said, I live at your mercy. I die at your command. Her finger left the axe with a sharp ring that echoed as clear as her voice. Empress Anvanar rose from her seat, walked to Irisk, the Butcher close behind her. Rise, Supreme Commandant, she said, You are used to speaking with the Southerners. You will go to them and meet with their boy king as my emissary. Do not disappoint me." Iris bowed to her. "Of course, my empress." She motioned to the butcher. "I tire of sharpening blades, Iris. Why should I bother when I have one so keen at my disposal?" The butcher's face twisted, the silent snarl of a rabid dog. ... New enemies required old entities to sleep, and so strength came into the West from those who were once abandoned, marching across the blasted land from their new home to fight for their old one. The strength of Dunya arrived. A Trollkin's might is unarguable, a troll's ferocity incontestable. When they first came, fear transformed into a faint glimmer of hope. But would even their strength be enough to turn the tide? ... Tension crackled as the grim-faced Trollkin approached the gathering. Soot-streaked and tired from the march, they passed through a courtyard packed with trenchers and winter guard, who warily looked on. Gunbjorn signaled the halt. In flawless Signarin, he said, "I seek an audience." Soldiers parted to let a familiar man through the crowd. A prince, a king, a counselor, and a betrayer. Leto. Gunbjorn had to resist the urge to salute. Old instincts, hard to suppress. If Leto recognized him, he did not show it. "I am High Chancellor." "Yes," Gunbjorn said. "Our messenger said you prepared for our arrival." "The War Council is already meeting." Leto took in the Trollkin's force, notably the full-blooded trolls. He looked disheartened. "Your oracle's message suggested there would be more. This is, what, 100? Gunbjorn couldn't hide his grim smile. "Just the ones I let into the fort." At his signal, one of the fell colors bellowed, a giant sound that boomed against the fort walls. Beyond the fort, another fell color answered, and another. Soon, the voices of the Trollkin, the cries of the pigs, and the rumble of the dire trolls filled the air, threatening to split the sky. He savored the surprise on Leto's face. "The army of the United Creels stands with you," he said. ... Only bits of the world pierced the veil of his coma. Muffled voices, like soft whispers in a far-off room. The gentle touch of his caretakers on his numbed skin. All else was darkness. Sebastian Nemo lingered in that place between waking and death. He dreamed, but they were fractured visions that became smoke when he drew close to grasping them. Old friends, old loves, all long past. His mind was his greatest gift, greater even than his warcaster ability. But in this void, this nowhere place, he could feel the walls of darkness drawing in around it. His body of flesh was an anchor. It drew him deeper each day. Time meant nothing. Days or hours, all the same in such a place. The only measurement he had was the slow creep of that impermeable shadow as his mind softened and weakened in his state. It was a prison that grew smaller each time he tested its bounds. In his maddening prison of unmoving meat, Nemo sensed muffled voices. He felt a gentle touch on his skin. A familiar scent fired off in the deep parts of his mind, yellow-white explosions of memory that rose in the mire of his coma. Movement, distant and strange, rocking him in his prison. Cycles of cold and warmth moving over him, where that familiar aroma became brassy and hot as it met the touch of fire, the sun. It was the odor of late summer nights spent over lengthy books, the smell of her. Impossible. Everything about her, every lovely and familiar mote, had been discarded, forgotten, left to rot unmarked in some forgotten place. Yet still her scent clung to him, pulled at him, pleaded for him to open his shuttered eyes once more. She was in his dreams more often, calling to him from beyond the crushing walls of his constricting mind. She begged him to wake. She shouted at him in her distant voice that time was running out. She began to hurt him, not the heartache from before, but a sharp, biting pain. If he had a voice, he would have told her to stop. Her words lanced through his flesh. Like scalpels, they cut through the cotton that muffled his numb skin. Like surgical tweezers, they plucked the wads that stuffed his unhearing ears. He felt pain. He heard the snarling snap of lightning, smelled the scent of roasting flesh. With a scream of pain, Nemo's eyes ripped open. A voice cried, "He's up! Back away!" He looked up at a beautiful face. Her face, not cold and iron, but warm flesh. Tears rose in her eyes. "Impossible," he managed to say, body still sharp with static from the current they must have used. His swimming vision resolved into the shape of Aurora, Newman of the Convergence. She broke into a relieved smile. "Welcome back, Father. ... Irisk wondered how many of the soldiers pointing guns at him had lost friends at his order. He did not find the question comforting. A timid Signarin approached, stumbling into the perimeter of the camp Irisk had erected. "My king has sent me to consider your surrender." The man's eyes drifted to Irisk's sword lying unsheathed on the table. "Empress Anvanar has commanded me to offer myself into Signarin hands," Irisk said, handing the toady a parcel sealed with the imperial signet. The envoy's eyes bulged. "Under what conditions?" "The Empress fears for the security of our homeland and wishes to surround herself." Irisk swallowed the bitterness in his throat, "with her most capable soldiers." The Signarin's face furrowed. "Meaning?" "I remain here," Irisk said, "to face whatever justice your king deems worthy. In return, you liberate Commander Strakov to rejoin the homeland." The line of Signarans beyond his modest camp bulked. Some began to murmur. "One of you, deliver this to the king," the envoy shouted at the soldiers, holding aloft the Empress's missive. "See he gets it at once." "What about him?" a soldier asked, pointing with his rifle. "Shoot him," another shouted. The Signarin envoy licked his teeth, considering the words. No, a bullet would never do for the Supreme Commandant. Irisk kept his face emotionless as the timid Signarin, finding his vigor, reached for the hilt of endgame. "It is tradition to die by the blade," he said. ... War is an unjust thing. Often, it returns its anguish on those who have already suffered it at its sting. So it was in Lael, which barely tasted the sweetness of freedom before new enemies sought to enslave it.